I am Lia Loewenthal. I'm going to be your Finimize host for today, and I'm going to be joined by Jade Rose. Today, we are going to be doing a review on an investing survival guide for entrepreneurs and the self-employed. We're going to be exploring the topics of making smart financial moves and how you can survive the recession. We are going to, or a recession, I should say. We're going to look at how we can leverage our businesses to improve our overall financial landscape. And we're going to see how we can look at an approach to investing when you may not have secure income. So investment is a really great thing, but for some of us who are self-employed or business owners or entrepreneurs like myself too, the idea of investing can feel a little bit out of reach. So we may not necessarily know where we want to start. And we may also be worried about the inconsistency of our income. So to speak on this subject, we're really lucky to have a very, very special guest today. Her name is Jade Rose. She has over 8 years of experience within the financial services industry, and she advises her clients on how you can grow and protect your wealth whilst planning for life's big milestones. And she's particularly focused on intergenerational wealth transfer between family members. Now, owing to Jade's background in the design field, she really enjoys particularly working on helping to create financial roadmaps for entrepreneurs, for content creators and creative professionals as well. And that will help them to get a great sense of financial clarity and direction. So I think this is a fantastic niche and subject, and needless to say, she's going to have a lot of valuable insights to share with us today. So just one more little note, as I said, if you haven't already, please do introduce yourself into the chat box with your name and where you're from. And we're going to start with our little 15-minute conversation. So now that that introduction is done, I'm going to pass over to Jade, who's going to kick us off and help to bring us up to speed on investing for entrepreneurs and also the self-employed. So Jade, hello, how are you?
Well, thank you. Thank you so much for having me. I'm actually a big fan of Finimize, so I'm fangirling somewhat at the moment.
Yes, I agree. It's a fantastic platform, isn't it? You learn so much about investing. So yeah, to start with, I'd love to hear a bit about how moving into 2023, some of the financial moves, the smart moves that we can make when we're thinking about potentially surviving a recession.
Yeah, absolutely. So, and you said in your intro, which I was really pleased with, it's not the recession, it's a recession. Yeah. And I think anyone who's been kind of watching the markets or has some level of understanding knows that with the right mindset, a recession is actually just one big opportunity. Now, to caveat, I'm not an investment manager. I certainly don't tell people what stocks to pick, but what I can do is tell you how to shape your overall financial landscape so that you can withstand the recession. For entrepreneurs like yourself or the self-employed, it is tricky when you don't have the security of that monthly salary coming in, but the mindset is very much the same. So most people know to put 10, 20, 30% of their income straight into savings or investments. And it's exactly the same when you're self-employed. I know what it's like to earn a pittance for months and then have a big contract come in, and the first thing you want to do is a holiday and dinners and all of that stuff. But it really is that mindset of putting that 20% away, regardless of when it comes in or how it comes in. So pound cost averaging, dollar cost averaging, really getting into that mindset of just putting something away. When it comes to employers, one of the biggest things people tend to do in recessions is to trim the fat. So it is looking at cost cutting, slimming down where you can, but just really making sure that your balance sheet is in order, your income expenditure. Now is the time if you are an entrepreneur, because of course the economy is cyclical. If people aren't spending money, then entrepreneurs and businesses aren't receiving that money. So in that downtime, it is actually an opportunity to really understand the nuts and bolts of your business. It's a bit different if you're a big corporate and you have teams, but for people like, I assume like yourself or like others, where you're the business owner, you're the accountant, you're everything in between, really understanding what the nuts and bolts of what's going on with your finances. And so moving on from that, I did want to talk a bit about some of the things that entrepreneurs and business owners can do to help with their finances and the financial landscape. So one of the things I do as a financial planner is cash flow forecasting. Have you ever done an exercise like that yourself, Leah?
Yes, it's something that I myself, so my business is called Get Comfy with Money, and I also help to take creatives and professionals through cash flows. I think it's the nuts and bolts for sure, isn't it?
It's fantastic. I always tell clients it's the closest thing you're going to get to a crystal ball. So for people who aren't familiar, cash flow forecasting is really understanding what your financial goals and objectives are. And if you don't have any, that's fine. We then look at what is the lifestyle that you want to have. And we start to add some numbers around that and what that might look like. And we reverse engineer to today. Okay, what do I need to do today to make that happen? And so as a freelancer or an entrepreneur without steady income, an exercise like this is really going to map out that financial roadmap for you. Instead of just investing being this nebulous thing and throwing money into stocks and hoping something sticks, because a lot of people think, you know, they need double-digit returns or they need to ride this train up. But really, if your ideal lifestyle costs X, the risk you should be taking should also be X. I think there's often a disconnect between what people want and need and what they think they should be doing in the market. So really get some clarity on what it is you need, why you need it, and how much that's likely to cost. Now, this is UK focused, but there'll be a global equivalent. So the way you set up your business is really important. Now, there's much more flexibility as a limited company. First of all, it separates the financial liability from the individual, but there are so many tax benefits as well. So one of the main things with freelancers and entrepreneurs, now, this isn't the sexiest bit of advice, but it's probably the most important. When you work for yourself, you don't have the luxury of sick pay. You literally can't afford to get sick. You don't have protections. You don't have pensions for the future. And so good financial landscapes start with making sure everything you're working for is protected. Now, the benefit of something like an income protection policy is that if you're a limited company, they're actually tax deductible. So you can reduce corporation tax using some of these benefits. And it's funny, Leah, because a lot of people will say to me, arbitrary number, you know, paying £30 a month for a policy, I don't want to do that. I have savings if I get sick. Now, if you get sick for 1 month, that's, let's say, £2,000 a month out of your savings every month. Whereas £30 a month for this policy, you know, it would take, you know, a year, 2 years for that equivalent money to come out. So definitely look into those kind of policies, secure your businesses and get that corporation tax deduction as well. And with the larger companies, you know, these group policies are all tax deductible. So there's a corporation tax saving there as well. With limited companies, you know, there's only 4 things you can really do. Keep the money in the business, take it as salary, take it as dividends, or pension contributions. Again, it's not sexy, warning, it's not the sexy one, but a lot of people don't realize when you're an employee, you can either put in up to £40,000 a year into your pension or the maximum of your earnings, that's it. When you're a business owner, there's no cap. You can put in that £40,000 a year. What that means is if you take the minimum salary, take your dividends, and then the rest in dividends, you can still put in £40,000 into your pension. And you're not going to be paying any income tax on that. You get the tax relief from the government, and then, of course, you're invested for growth as well. The reason this is great in a time like this, where perhaps inexperienced investors aren't sure where to go or what to do, is you can actually use the last 3 years of pension contributions plus this year. So that's £160,000 that business owners could put into their pension without paying any income tax. They get the tax relief from the government and they're invested in the markets when at the moment markets are down. For me, on paper, we take out the unsexy word pension. We look at everything else on between and underneath that. That's super exciting and such a huge opportunity that people miss because they think smart investing or the way to invest for maximum wealth is crypto and, you know, all of these sexy things. And crypto is sexy. I'm not denying that. But there are ways of being really smart and most importantly, really cautious and considered about how you invest and maximizing all of these allowances, because particularly in the UK, all of the allowances are about to be kneecapped. So my advice is, before April, if you haven't used your allowances yet, look into them, maximize them where you can, because we just don't know when we're going to get them back.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you so much for that little rundown. I feel like you've given so many incredible tips there. And I think at the end, what we'll do is I might just summarize some of those things you said as actionable takeaways, so that those listening know some of the tips they can take away and actually apply for their particular circumstances. And what you were talking about with dollar cost averaging, I wanted to just kind of come back to that maybe, because the other question I wanted to ask you was around how we approach investing when we may not have secure income, or with the market fluctuating as it is. So maybe could you explain a little bit more about that as a strategy that would be good for self-employed and business owners?
Yeah, absolutely. So when you invest in diversified funds, the fund manager will always keep a portion of that in cash. And for various reasons, but one of them being they have liquidity when opportunity arises. And so my advice is to treat your own income as your own personal funds, well diversified, a bit into stocks, maybe a bit into bonds, but always keep that portion of cash. And so when you are paid for your projects or your client work, not only into savings, that's your emergency fund, but also keep some cash into your opportunity fund for times like now when markets are down, aka markets are on sale, and you're able to get into the market. You yourself are an entrepreneur. How have you found investing without that regular income?
Yeah, so what you said about having a percentage, that's always been important for me. So it doesn't matter what comes in, I know that a percentage of that is going to go towards investing rather than it being a dollar amount or a pound amount. Mm-hmm. I know that if one month I make less than the other, I still am investing that 10 to 20% portion of my incoming money. So I know something's going in, even if it's not as much as I'd like it to go.
Exactly. And I think what's important is going back to the mindset and the holistic approach. And I know this from experience that finances can run away with you and be the last thing on your mind when you've got so many plates in the air. And that, in my experience, is when people don't invest, because everything's just, it's all about the business, it's all about the growth, and everything else is kind of secondary. But it really is worth the time sitting down and getting that clarity on, what does my lifestyle cost? What are my monthly outgoings? Yes, you're not going to get the income regularly, but if you know what your lifestyle costs, when your income comes in, you can, again, smooth that over the year.
Brilliant. I also think that's a really, really important tip, because, yeah, we can get caught up in the grind or the trying to make money portion. Mm-hmm. And I think sometimes investment is seen as like a nice to have rather than something that's essential for that future. So would you say that it's just as important to incorporate in your strategy?
Absolutely. So my biggest piece of advice to investors, whether employed or self-employed, is the money you section off every month for savings and investments, you should consider that an essential expense. It's not discretionary, it's not optional, it's not luxury or nice to have. That is absolutely part of your essential spend. And so when I do an emergency fund exercise with my clients, I say, well, what are your monthly costs? Always include those pension contributions, the investment contributions, the savings. It's non-negotiable.
Agreed. I love that. So thank you so much for that. So now I'm sure all of those listening out there have your own questions that you'd like to ask Jade as well. And as she mentioned, she's not able to give personal financial advice. So please skip those types of questions. But if you have anything that you'd like to know that's going to help broaden your understanding or confidence when it comes to investing, please do add it into the Q&A chat box. I can see that we do have a question there to start with, so I'm going to read this one out from Jessica. So Jessica's saying, as you said, crypto is sexy. What are your thoughts on investing in crypto? More generally, do you have any advice regarding creating a portfolio for entrepreneurs to invest a percentage of their income every month?
Okay, good question. So I have... I know my compliance team are going to pull me up on this, so I'm just being very careful. Okay, so listen, Jessica, yeah, crypto is sexy. I'm not saying don't invest in it, but what I am saying is there are so many incredible unsexy things that you can invest in first, like the pension and like the ISAs and all of these top-ups that have insane tax benefits. And I would consider looking at those and making sure those are maxed out before the crypto. What I always say to clients is, because I do work with younger clients, content creators, people who are interested in the crypto space, let a financial planner like myself, or do it yourself, make sure all the T's are crossed and the I's are dotted, and treat your crypto portfolio as something you can stand to lose, because as we've seen, it's so volatile. Don't go putting money for a mortgage into crypto. Don't go putting money that you're going to need in 5 years into crypto. I would go into it with the attitude of, if it increases, fantastic. If you lose money, it's not going to disrupt your business or your lifestyle.
Lovely. Thank you for answering it like that. Well said. I think with investment, that's such a great point, isn't it? Make sure that with some of the more risky known ones, make sure it's not going to impact you to lose that money, because there is that chance that you would lose it. And Jessica actually just said she is a content creator, so I think you're talking directly to her. Thanks for that question, Jessica. And now Mohammed's got a question in regards to pensions. He says, would you recommend keeping that percentage of your income and using that for investment or as a savings for retirement?
So if you're going to use that percentage for your retirement, you don't take it out of the company. You pay into your pension directly from the company as what's called an employer contribution. So not only do you save the income tax, but it also reduces your profits and thus reduces your corporation tax bill as well. Now, if you are a smaller company, you can actually hire, family member or spouse, and they do have to do some work, of course. But if they are not earning or a low earner, you can do the same for them. And because there's no cap on employer contributions up to the £40,000, you could also pay into their pension another £40,000, again, reducing your profits, reducing your corporation tax, and avoiding income tax for that family member as well. Obviously, it depends on your levels of turnover and profit and whatnot, but in theory, that's what you can do. So don't take the money out of the business if it's going to be going into your pension.
Brilliant. I hope that answered your question, Mohammed. That looks like it. Thank you. And we have one as well from Phil. So Phil's asking, are there any tools or platforms you know to help self-employed creatives to manage, track their finances and investments?
This isn't a shameless plug because it's a free resource I'm going to be offering, but I'm just about to launch. So it's a budget tracker, but more the cash flow forecasting that I mentioned earlier for creatives. So people tend to have income from all sorts of resources, all sorts of sources. It's difficult to track. It has a cash flow graph that tells you what's expected to come in, when it was actually paid in, and will help content creators and entrepreneurs spot key periods in the year when perhaps income is highest or lowest, and help them be able to track that. So feel free to reach out, and when it's launched, I'll be happy to send over a copy.
Brilliant. And I'm sure that we will be able to share the resources after the chat as well. So thank you for that answer and that question as well, Phil. And Dominic has a question. Do you have any investment recommendations during these most difficult times?
I'm going to say no on this one, just because I'm not an investment manager, so it's not my remit to stock pick or offer investment advice.
Great, understood. And Tom, I am in a partnership, LLP, with some extra cash at the end of the financial year. Any ideas to invest this cash to avoid getting a big personal tax bill? So is there a way we can answer that that's not personal advice?
Yeah, that one's a bit tricky. I would say, going back to the pension advice earlier, if you haven't maxed out that pension, definitely do so. If you haven't done your carry forward, so you could technically put in up to £160,000 this tax year, definitely look into that as well. If you have maxed those out, we are veering into personal advice, but feel free to reach out to me one-on-one and we could have a chat. There are other options that you could do, but probably best not to go into it on the call.
That's fair too. Great. And Naya has a question for you regarding pensions as well. I think this is a very hot topic, and I know myself being a freelancer or being self-employed, it's a subject that there isn't much information out there that's readily available. So it's one that I know comes up a bit. So could you please repeat the main pension instrument or program that you mentioned before, as well as other fundamental contributions one can make, or maybe equivalents for Europe if you know any?
I don't for Europe, unfortunately, but if you want to reach out to me, I can certainly signpost. So I'm not sure what's meant by the pension vehicle. So if you could just pop that in the chat, if you can clarify what you mean. But just to explain the basics of how pensions work. So perhaps there may not be a state pension when we all come to retire. So the government is trying to encourage us to have our own personal private pension to supplement us in later life. And one of the ways they do that is to offer tax relief. Now, what that means is, let's say for every £100 you put into your pension, if you're a basic rate taxpayer, they will put in £20. If you're a high rate taxpayer, they'll put in £20, and you can claim the other £20 back in your self-assessment. So with that being said, every time you contribute to your pension, the government's putting in as well. You don't pay, your pension also falls out of your estate for inheritance tax. So inheritance tax, if you didn't know, is 40%. You can't even die without paying taxes, but your pension falls out of that estate. So it really is worth building up your pension, one, for all the tax relief, but two, if you are thinking about generational wealth and passing that money down to children and grandchildren, the bigger the pension, the more money you can pass without the tax man getting his grubby little hands in when you die.
Thank you. And I think on that note, maybe I haven't seen a response from Naya as to what they meant by instrument program, but are there any tools or platforms that you could recommend using or have had experience using? For example, I know that there are robo-investors out there that can manage them. Are there any actual tools or resources that you have experience with?
Yeah, I mean, I think all of the robo-advisors, assuming they are FCA regulated and all of that, so just always be mindful of the new tech platforms. But, you know, I definitely think there's a great place for robo-advisors for example, people who are self-employed or just starting out on their investing journey. Automating payments going out, that's one of the best things. Out of sight, out of mind. Always pay yourself first. Key Robert Kiyosaki, you know, pay yourself before you start paying your bills, before you start paying everybody else, because you are the most important investment you'll make. And I think robo-advisors are great for that. Where they can fall down is when tax needs get complicated or when you do want that face-to-face advice. So for example, you know, looking at the generational wealth piece, robo-advisors can't help with that. But yeah, I'm a user of a couple myself. So yeah, I think they're fantastic.
Brilliant. And I think Robert's kind of just touched on this as well with his question about what your opinion is about the flexible pension self-management systems, the recent ones, for example, Pension Bee. I think there's Nutmeg as well is another one.
You have to forgive me, I'm not familiar what you mean by do you mean the general pension freedoms or something else?
Robert, if you could elaborate on that, that would be great. Thank you. And whilst we're waiting for Robert to feed back on that, I'd love to hear a little bit, if you've got just a minute or so, just to share with us a bit more, like for my own personal interest, on your investing journey. So how did you start building that up? Because you're obviously very passionate about working with creatives. You've been a creative yourself. So how did that journey start for yourself?
So I am not too proud to admit that my investing journey started out of me doing everything wrong. The opposite of everything I've just told everybody to do, that was me, and that's how I came to this space. Because as a creative, as a freelancer, I just didn't understand money. And I always knew there was something more out there, but I just didn't know what. So I taught myself personal finance and realized most people don't know this stuff. The government isn't teaching us this stuff. Schools aren't, teachers aren't. If you're lucky, your company might have an employee program, but more often than not, they don't. So my investment journey started out of my own pain points. And now actually a big part of what I do is the education piece. So events like this, I actually work with corporates to offer financial education as a wellness benefit. Like you said, it is something I'm so passionate about because it really is accessible. It's just knowing the right things and where to go.
Absolutely. I totally resonate with that. And yeah, I think it's important to know that as an entrepreneur or as a business owner or freelancer or self-employed, you can look at other people who've gone through that same journey. Like, I find a lot of power and inspiration in hearing the stories of others like yours, because we've all been in this position. Maybe for a lot of us, we are self-taught, so we may not have the basis or understanding. And even if you do learn these things in uni or in school, it's maybe not so much in depth with this type of thinking and looking at investing, unless you're really going into that area of finance. So it's really useful to have that look at it from a community basis. So Robert has said a little bit more. He said Pension B combines all your old pensions into one new online plan and transfers your old pensions and invests them into a brand new online plan. So does that help give a bit more clarity?
Yeah, so I mean, if we're just talking about pension consolidation, in the main, yeah, I'm a big fan of that. A lot of people, particularly millennials, it's probably too early for Gen Z, but particularly millennials, we have zigzagging careers. It's not a job for life with a nice defined benefit pension at the end anymore, sadly. So people will accumulate various pension pots, and often they forget about them and they just go unclaimed. So consolidating them into one is a great idea. Going back to that cash flow forecasting, it's difficult to know what you're going to have in retirement or what your general investment landscape looks like if your pots are dotted all over the place. So bringing them under one roof, one management fee. One, it's easy from an admin perspective, but two, it also gives you a much clearer picture on what exactly you have and what your net worth is.
Brilliant. Thank you, Jade. We have one more question. I think we can just fit this one in. Thank you for this last question. So it is, Jade, you say you trained yourself in personal finances. What courses, certifications did you do? How did you train yourself?
Well, I say I train myself. I am a fully qualified financial advisor. I trained myself in the first instance, the way many of you are doing right now, and it's amazing to see so many of you taking an interest. And then I sat my qualifications with the Chartered Institute of Securities and Investments, fully FCA licensed and whatnot. But I do hope you take from that it doesn't matter what industry you're in, what position you're in, what your financial situation is right now. It is possible to figure this out if you just, ask the right questions, go to the right places. It is so doable.
Brilliant. Thank you. And so just to summarize for everyone who's listened and anyone who listens to the recording, could you just kind of give us an overview of your key actionable steps that you think people should take away from this to get started with their investing journey?
So number one, if you're self-employed, don't be freaked out by the numbers. Get under the bonnet, understand what you've got going in, what you've got coming out, and make a promise to yourself to pay yourself first. No matter when you get paid or how much you get paid, a portion of that goes to your savings or investments first. The second one, use your pension allowances whilst you still can. Remember what I said, you can go back 3 years. That's £160,000 worth of pension investments that you can make, assuming you earn £40,000 or more. And the third one is leverage your business from all the tax deductible benefits. So income pay, either for yourself or for your employees, life cover, critical illness cover, all these protections that aren't sexy but are so necessary. They're tax deductible if you are a limited company. So look into those and claim your tax back if you're not doing it already.
Incredible. Thank you so much, Jade, for speaking to me and to the Finimize community today. And for all of you out there listening, don't forget to use the Finimize app so that you can receive daily investment insights from the world-class analysts that are on there. And please also remember to fill in the feedback form that will pop up on your screens after this event so that you can let us know what you enjoyed about this event today and what you'd like to see next. Thank you so much for everything and have a wonderful rest of the day.
Thank you.